Within the cabbageworm complex, the diamondback moth is the most important member. The adult is small and emerges from a cocoon found on the leaves of cabbage and its relatives. The caterpillars are green and small. They make characteristic windows in the leaves. The cabbage looper is a larger green caterpillar that can eat a lot of leaf material if allowed to mature. It has a characteristic looping form of walking. Broadmites. Broadmites are most often found in peppers. They cause a jerry curl of the leaves due to their toxic saliva. A magnifying glass or hand lens is needed to see them on the underside of new pepper leaves. They are not normally found on leaves that show severe jerry curling because they have already moved on to healthy new leaves. The Cucurbit Pest Complex. In the Cucurbit Pest Complex, the melon worm is the most common problem of melons, cucumbers, pumpkin, and squashes. It is an aggressive green worm with white stripes that, when small, can be found in the growing tips of the runners. It produces a webbing that closes the leaves and protects it. Other significant pests in the cucurbit complex include the cucumber beetle and the flea beetle, whose adults feed on the leaves. Its larva does little damage to the roots themselves. It can, however, make the plant more susceptible to root diseases.
We're just checking your pepper field to see what kind of pests, insect pests you have, and then we can decide how we treat them. So with the pepper, one of the main things we look for is the mites. The tiny little white, not insect, but they crawl around the underside of the leaf. So I always use my hand lens because these things are like a millimeter. They're very small. And the mites, they don't live on the bigger leaves at the bottom. They always like the fresh new leaves. So yeah, these ones here. So these are the ones we got to look for to see mites. Like when the mite's really bad, the leaf crinkles up, and you've seen that before.
I've seen them.
But when they're crinkled up, it's almost too late because they already have done their damage. So what we try and do is we come in early. Yeah, early. Because if they're not here, we don't want to waste money by spraying pesticides. But if they are there, we want to catch them early. So what I do is, normally I go to a field and I make sure I visit all the different areas of the field. Because then I want to know if the mites are everywhere. Because say if the mites are only here, I come here and I go, man, look at all these mites here. So now I want to spray the whole field. But maybe this is the only area of the field with mites.
Among monitoring and pest control choices, the use of sticky traps and barrier crops are strongly recommended. Barrier crops intercept insects flying into the field. The barrier crop should be planted before the crop so that it is always taller, as insects tend to land on higher vegetation first. The most commonly used barrier crop is corn, but since corn is proving to have too short a lifespan, Fintrac now promotes longer living grasses, such as sorghum and kinggrass. These crops must be planted at least 2 weeks before seedling transplant and should be 2 rows thick and closely spaced. The corn planted in this video is planted with this concept in mind. Sticky traps are used to monitor the presence and type of insects entering the field. They should be placed outside the crop and barrier crop. Materials required for constructing sticky traps are a hammer, a knife, nails, yellow plastic sheeting because the color is attractive to insects, sticks, Blotac, which is a very sticky substance that literally causes the insects to stick to the plastic, gasoline, which is used to dilute the Blotac, an old container for mixing, and a knapsack sprayer. Step 1 is sharpening the stakes. As you sharpen stakes, make sure that they are at an even height. Step 2 is attaching the yellow plastic to the stakes. When attaching the plastic to the stakes, make sure that the plastic lays flat so that when installed, it is taut. When finished, it should look like this. Step 3 is installing the sticky trap. Use a sharp object to make holes in the ground where you want to install the trap. Drive the stakes into the ground further by using a hammer. Step 4 is diluting the Blotac in the gasoline. Mix the Blotac and gasoline using the ratio of 4 parts gas to 1 part Blotac so that the mixture is thin enough to spray. Step 5 is spraying. Add the mixture to the sprayer and spray evenly on both sides of the trap. Sticky trap should be incorporated into a monitoring program for pests. Trap counts should be made on a regular basis, and the information gathered should be recorded so that it may be used for pest control decisions. After every trap count, the trap should be cleaned, removing all insects and dirt.
These corns is ordinary hybrid field corns. They'll grow about 6 or 7 feet tall. Because we need the corn to be very tall, so that what happens is when the insects, especially if it is flying, especially the flying one, and they're zooming in, what they see first, that's where they will stop. So your barrier should be up here and your crop there, right? Okay, when they saw the barrier, a few of them may go through, but 90% of the time they're going to stop in that barrier. Okay? When the aphids, for instance, that transmit the virus, hit that corn barrier, especially aphids, they will pierce the leaf of the corn, and when they pierce the leaf of the corn,